Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Thank you all for being here. This is my favorite place to be on a Thursday in the Valiant live stream. And right before this is what's great. We interact with our audience. You know, we're there for them. Really quick before we dive in, I'm echoing, right, Matt?
I'm sorry?
Am I echoing?
A little
No,
bit.
a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'll wrap this up quick. Thank you, Jonathan Crow, for joining us last week. And today we're doing the recover part of our CSF. We have Tim Golden. George, will you do the honors and introduce Tim?
Absolutely. So I'm going to say thank you, Tim, for taking the time out this morning. I know you always are a great viewer and supporter, and awesome to have you here. So a little bit about Tim. Tim, I will say with some level of certainty that Tim is definitely earned the title Mr. Compliance. Kind of owns this compliance space. He knows it really well. He's CEO of Compliance Risk IO. They're doing a lot of work on policy management, process automation, the pieces that make this job super hard. So we're really excited to have Tim here and support him in that. He's also CEO of Biotech Services, a really well-known, really solid MSP in New England. And I said he's been here before, but man, when we talked about doing this CSF and especially about this recovery piece component, number 5, Tim was our very first and logical choice to have him here to do this with us. So, the way we're going to do it is just kind of talk a little bit about it, kind of get Tim's perspective. He's done so much more than so many people in the industry, and ask some questions, kind of riff back and forth some dialogue. So, Tim, what is the recover component? And you've been doing it forever. So when you in your mind say recover, what's the recover?
Yeah, so first, let me just thank you for having me on here again. I always appreciate the opportunity to come in and chat and help educate the community around this governance, risk, and compliance stuff, right? So, yeah, step 5, the recovery phase. So I don't want to get into all the gory details. As you can see, 800- or NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST 800 184 is all about your guide for cybersecurity recovery. And yeah, the thing's like 53 pages long, and I can't tell you the countless number of times I've had to reread it, print it out, highlight it, line it out, go back and forth. But at the end of the day, when I look at the recovery phase, kind of coming back from where we were last week and rolling into the next step of the process, recovery for me is a lot about learning opportunities. It's a lot about, lessons learned. It's a lot about RCA.
You mean
hey,
hold
Matt,
on.
What is that?
What's an RCA? Hold on. It's not Radio Corporation of America.
So it's not the thing with the dog and the
Sound.
His name is Nipper.
And
no, it's not that.
The phonograph, I believe it was.
It's his master's voice. No, an RCA is the root cause analysis, and it is the core stripping down of the thing that caused the thing to happen, and it is the thing. It is the really heart and soul of the recover to some degree is getting down to what happened and not letting it happen again. Kind of going back up to number 1.
How about we really quickly just define it as the catalyst for everything that's taking place?
It's a very fancy way of putting it, but yes, catalyst.
Well, Valiant, Plymouth Valiant, catalytic converter. I'm trying to make some
connections. I owned a Plymouth Valiant. It was my very first car, but I don't want to digress into that. But it was olive drab green, hence the military background, right? Yeah. But it had amazing chrome. So, but I digress, right? I needed to recover from when that car caught on fire. I had to get into the root cause of the there was a little wire in there. I forget what the name of it was, but the little wire kind of arced across the spark plug, and caused the car to caught on fire, and then I had to recover. What I had to do was do a root cause analysis to figure out probably piss poor Plymouth design, and the thing caught on fire. But back to what we're getting at here. So yes, the recovery phase, there's a lot of pieces of the process, right?
Right.
We don't want to get into even just the introductory is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 14 billion pages.
It's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words. So
Let's get some of the words off screen and have some discussion. The folks that need. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, excellent. So I guess, if we break it down into a bit of like the three components that I strongly, right? It's the communication,
Yep.
improvement, and recovery planning, right? So let's just maybe dive into those a little bit. Like, so communication, which is the piece that most, I think, the IT folks side of the house don't really think about very much. I can say, doing this a long time, it's a part that I never thought about until I started really thinking about it and thinking this as more of a business problem than like my IT guy problem. Like, when you think about this, like, well, the database isn't available and we can't process orders, and I'm just scared that I'm going to get it back up, running, right? But when you start thinking about like, how does this impact our ability to take orders or fulfill orders or generate quotes or anything in the business function of it, it's really important. And Tim, you're right. It's who, how, and when.
Mm-hmm.
Who do they communicate to? How the methodology and the timing, because that's really important. Because we've all kind of gotten those messages like from the cable company. I know where I live, it's always like, "Hey, there's a bad storm. Your cable might go out. We have trucks rolled."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's pretty good communication. Doesn't seem to do anything for me, but I appreciate the sentiment.
And there's some major incidents where people haven't communicated breaches 10 months after or something. It's like
that's
the bad examples.
That's a very strong example. Exactly right. But
yeah,
even think about this. It's just, and actually it's a part of most, I think, recovery plans that are not defined really well. And it's the part that I think most people get wrong. Because it's a business function. You want to have all the pieces of the communication puzzle or communication plan kind of laid out. Like I said, who, how, when. And Tim, when some of the ones you've seen that are good, what are some good examples of things that you've seen that are good?
So as I'm a policy and a process guy. We all know that, right? And so, in my mind, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist, right? So
right.
There's no process. Like we hear this all the time, right? People, process, tech, right? Define what it is, right? So when I look at the communication aspect, right? Well, wasn't it Facebook not too long ago that had a big outage, and then part of that outage was they couldn't even communicate internally?
Correct.
And when they looked at their plans and how they respond to stuff, it wasn't well defined with, hey, we should pick up our cell phone instead. Like part of your communication planning, part of your incident response and disaster recovery and business continuity, all the things that I literally write all day, every day, is having a well-defined communication plan with a backup plan that says, hey, maybe we use Slack. Maybe internet doesn't even work at this point and we have to use carrier pigeon, whatever, right? Having a well-defined multiple pieces of communication and part of your plan, not just the how and the tech, but the who, right?
I think, yes.
The who is extremely important. Like, for example, CFO, people that have the ability to make purchasing decisions quickly, right? Maybe you have somebody in your organization that's responsible for the health and well-being of your employees, whether that's HR or not. Like, you're going to have a bunch of staff with a bunch of stressful situations. Like, having that person of like, keeping the even keel. Let's not make the wave crash, but let's have a nice ripple, and having that person defined as part of your plan.
You need to have someone with a certain sense of authority that the folks feel comfortable turning to for guidance. Right. And I think that a lot of that comes from policy as well, as you're talking, which is great because I love that I'm being relatively quiet today and soaking it all in. It's great having Tim and George together in here today at the same time. But it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you see the instructions for what to do when someone's choking.
Yeah.
It's there because when someone is having an incident, everyone freaks out. And you see the sign, you know where it is because it's a standard. It's always going to look the same. It's going to have information, and it's going to have contact details on it too. I think like usually they have the manager of the store and other stuff. It's very similar to
fire evacuation plan.
You have the fire marshal on the floor. You have your bathroom checkers. You have the seekers. Everyone has a defined role. You know who they are because it's listed on the sheet. So when something happens, you smell smoke, you see fire, you know exactly what needs to be done and who's going to do it. And I don't think it's terribly different from that.
Matt, you're making some really interesting points, right? So how does this relate to small businesses? How does this relate to, Johnny's Lug Nut Factory with 8 people, right? So yeah, they're really good at having an evacuation plan. They probably have an eye wash station, right?
Yeah,
They probably have a sprinkler or maybe an AED or things in the building that they're kind of already used to doing as part of normal business practices. That's where places like Valiant, Compliance Risk, that's where experts like ourselves can come in and walk alongside you and translate this 53-page document into something that is relatable to what you do and just augmenting the technology portion of your business. Right? Have an evacuation plan in case of fire. Do you have a in case of fire incident response thing? That's where bringing in experts like us to be able to help you.
Yeah. And I think I like I think you just used the term relatable, and I think that having documentation like this that's relatable also makes it actionable. It's tied enough to your own business functions, your goals, your concerns, and everything else that comes along with owning a business, and that makes it so much easier to execute because you understand exactly what it is that you're restoring or recovering, retaining, whatever it is. You're a little bit more invested because it's directly tied to what you're doing.
Yes.
And I think the other piece and I think Tim will agree, a lot of this is like, write it down. It could be a single page document.
Yes.
Is better in an emergency than nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
you're like speaking my love language, right? So, as I work with my techs at my MSP or, on the compliance side, like, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. If there's no policy or plan in place and a program to manage that, it doesn't exist. Even if it's a one sentence, in case of fire, break glass. Okay, we have a fire plan, right? In case of, I don't know, ransomware, call IT.
Right. Well,
right.
Exactly. And we see a lot in the communication, especially when we start, depending on the sophistication of the customer and that sort of thing. They want these like giant, like orange book, yellow, plans of IR, and that's actually really not what the goal is here. That's more of a technical deep dive on systems. It's kind of more of a standards and practices kind of thing. Procedures. Really the IR. This piece of it really is about, especially particularly the communication piece, is about I said, who has authority, who's going to talk to who, when, and how. What's the messaging going to be in case of XYZ things? Leave it loose. And the other pieces, I think it's really important. If you have insurance, if you have an attorney, if you have a PR firm on retainer, or you work with them, or you know them, or if you don't know them, ask your MSP or ask your advertiser, whatever it is. Ask those people, because I know we work with a lot of folks in PR and crisis communication. You can get some really great things together in advance. Not a ton of money. And man, you will appreciate having someone who knows your business a bit, knows what happens there and what can happen there in advance. So, it's there's a lot of terms for it, but just before it all goes bad, that ounce prevention, pound a cure kind of situation. I think.
Yes.
Look, you always want to prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Right.
Exactly.
But you can't forget that preparation part.
Yeah.
We've actually broken this down into 4 very simple categories, right? Alignment. So what do you do in your business, and what are the things that happens? Being able to take your plan and align it to what you're doing, right? Authorize. George, you talked a lot about the person of authority that has decision-making power, right? Who is authorizing, right? The 4th piece, which we haven't touched on, which is adoption, right?
Yes.
Part of your communication plan should be, how do we train our staff and our vendors and our MSP and all the other pieces of the puzzle on this plan, on this policy? Like, hey, think back in school when you used to have fire drills. They had a process, they had a plan, and then they taught the kids how to exit the building. If you're old, like George and I, bomb drills where we would hide under the desk, right?
Yes.
So
the signs up for your fallout shelter. how many people survive. It's kind of scary. Yeah.
All right. So before we get into any type of form of discussion around nuclear warfare, I just wanted to push us along because, as this conversation is going, and I got to tell you, I'm absorbing a lot, and I hope that the folks watching this are as well. We've got 2 more areas to talk about, and it's already almost halfway through the normal time we use. So I'm gonna push us down to improvements and what could be done better.
Man, so improvements are so this is once you go back to your root cause analysis, once you start going back to your what happened, the term that people love to do is lessons learned. And I think it's something that is so critical. I know here at Valiant, we even our basic projects, we have a post-mortem, post-project. Hey, did that go well? What went wrong? Talk to the customer about what went right, what went wrong. Did we do it in a cost-effective way? Did we communicate properly? And if you're constantly reiterating your improvements, particularly in this security realm, in incident planning, it really you're in a short time, you'll greatly improve your odds of survival. Right? Every time you find something, anytime it doesn't seem not working right, anytime even a small event, and you take it, hey, what happened there? Like, hey, one of the users this is an easy example. So a user clicks on something, and it's the first key push in a business email compromise attack, phishing attack, but you averted it. You use that as lessons learned. Like, so and so Jim got attacked last week. We got pretty fishy, got pretty close, but our system slowed it down, stopped it, prevented it from executing. But you use each of these pieces to kind of keep building your lessons learned, kind of like catalog, if you want to call it that.
You could almost look at it as a form of small to medium business natural selection. If you don't adapt to your environment, you eventually no longer exist.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. That's a very good point.
I'm bringing the gems this week. I'm bringing the gems.
Yeah, you are.
Exactly.
And I literally just pulled out what you said, George, out of 800-184. That was continually improving your process from lessons learned and validating those pieces along the way.
I think the important message to come through to people on that is that nothing is ever perfect, but everything can always be a little bit better.
I also think people outside of the industry think IT they have an idea. It gets fixed. This is one and done. And it's like, this is constantly evolving. This field is evolving. How to protect yourself is evolving. It's not the most cheerful example, but it's Sisyphean. We have to keep pushing that rock up the hill.
Well, it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
Or I like to use it's a marathon, not a sprint.
It's in some ways it almost feels more like a through hike because you're starting in Georgia and you might end up in Maine.
Yeah.
2,000 plus miles of walking up and down mountains, and some days are going to be easy days in the valley, and you might be just having a great snack in a great town in New England. Other days you're in a 100-mile wilderness. You're by yourself. You're just like, man, I don't know if I can do this. So it's very, if you ever run a marathon, a half marathon, any kind of race, and especially an endurance kind of thing, there's always a moment where you're like, "This, I don't want to do this anymore. I want this to stop." But invariably, you have to kind of push through it, and I think just because of the risk, the stakes are so high. I think that we as professionals, and I think a lot of small business owners and operators and responsible people need to start thinking that way. Like, this is going to be an ongoing thing, much like your OSHA, like they go maybe out to your Johnny's Lug Nuts. I mean, that eye wash station is not there for no reason, right? Someone got a metal shard in their eye 75 years ago. Right. And no, maybe we should put an eye wash station in every industrial facility because we can prevent someone from being blind.
I'm so happy we had those in my chemistry lab in high school. So happy.
No time for that, Matt. We only have 10 minutes.
No, we're not. No recollections. But speaking of 10 minutes, I think one of the most important part is the actual recovery planning. The restoration of business services is really what we need to kind of get into before we call it a day. Yep. And this is the actual execution of a recovery plan. Yep. This is what takes place after the response to the event. The event has been neutralized or handled in one way or another, and this is bringing things back to an operational state. And after reading some of 800-147, is that the one that's
183?
183. Thank you. There's so many numbers. I like ones and zeros. The other ones are confusing.
Yeah, dyslexic guy about letters, numbers, and acronyms.
But, when reading through it, there's so much to take in. But at the end of the day, this is really the actual restoration of services to bring you back into a normal operating state, and not part of the response. And I think that sometimes if you read the actual documents from NIST, that gets a little bit lost if it's not something that you have some exposure to in the first place.
Yeah, Tim made a point, the actual sentence, I think the actual term for a tactical recovery phase, and that's a great way of thinking of it. And when you speak to people quite a bit, people really muddle myself. At times, my mind as well. Strategy and tactics get a little muddled at times. You really got to keep it clear. Tactics are literally the thing you do to do the thing you need to get done. It's the actual procedural. It gets down to procedures. It gets down to checklists. It's nuts and bolts. It's like, this server has a recovery objective of this. We're going to activate it. We're going to recover it here. We're going to do these things. We're going to then go back to the communication plan, notify them that it's back up and running, and it's listed out. Now, depending on the business, you might want to be a little looser, stronger. You can get too popular, I think, in this space. So I would love to get your input on it. So
this all goes all the way back to the very beginning of rolling out a risk management framework, and that is starting with a business impact analysis and understanding what are the key and critical things that you need to operate your business. And so maybe you don't care about email. Maybe you're only a phone-based organization, right? So being able to go back to your business impact analysis and being able to say, yeah, listen, we got to get email back up and running. Great. How do we do that now that we've discovered what the challenge is? We've done some root cause to understand what's going on, and getting the technicians to then begin that restoration process,
right?
Email services or other services within your organization that you've already identified from the business planning.
Right. You don't want to be making a decision on the fly, because invariably you might, not invariably, you will start making decisions based on emotion and gut.
Yes.
Decisions based on emotion, decisions based on priority from a business perspective. And one thing that I think sometimes gets lost, and I burned myself for this years ago, is an order of execution from the technical side. Understanding what machines and systems are dependent on others, bringing things up in the right order so that as people are able to start doing work again, they're actually able to do work again.
Are you saying that you brought your Exchange server up before your DNS? Classic.
No. What I'm saying is that my DNS services may have stalled when Active Directory was trying to start up.
Correct.
And then
you had to pause it.
Oh yeah, that was a couple of reboots before I realized what was going on.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Funny, we've all kind of done it.
Anyone that's seen like a Windows 2000 server login screen sit there at the little thing going by for like 10 minutes knows it's because DNS is not working.
Does it fail? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Always DNS.
Always DNS. That's the first thing we tell our juniors, people starting in the like if you're not sure it is, you're probably going to go with DNS, because invariably it's going to be DNS, right? It's DNS.
Unless there's no lights on the machine, it's probably DNS.
So I think and that's a great it's that prioritization, and once again, that's not an IT decision. Mm-hmm. I think go back to me. That's absolutely unequivocally not the IT person's decision.
Right.
Yeah, even up to a very large corporation, CIO, all those folks, they need to go to their board. They need to go to the executive team and say, okay, these are the risks. This is what's going to happen. This is how we as a team going to decide, and ultimately the CEO and the person's truly final responsibility has to make that decision.
If you look at technology as largely being the engine of a business, we can turn our car engine over by turning the key, but you don't do the same thing with a luxury cruiser liner, a ship. Come on, that's a whole crew of people. There's an order that has to take place. There are certain risks involved if things are done wrong, and you don't want the ship to sink. And that's kind of where we're going with this.
Right.
I think as we're getting close to wrapping up, I think one of the nuggets that I might be able to leave small to mid-sized businesses with is find a partner that can help you, like Valiant, to be able to bring you into these conversations. You don't, as a business owner, necessarily need to know the nuances of a 53-page planning document. What you do understand as a business owner is your business risk. And working with Valiant or myself or any other those in the space that know this space that you have that relationship with, is to be able to have these conversations about your business risk and bring in the experts to help guide you through these processes before everything else happens and before an event.
Absolutely. Tim, you couldn't put it more eloquently.
That's great. Yeah.
And yes, Ray, you and I love documentation, but
yeah,
someone has to.
Someone has to. In some way, that's where the expertise comes in. But just to kind of wrap it all up, I mean, this is like such a great topic. I mean, I talk for hours about this. This is one of the things I'm really passionate about. I mean, all of us are here because I think that for me, and I think for the Valiant team, and I think Tim as well, this is where what we do really impacts the business in a way that is so visible and tangible, right? We do our job well. We give great advice. We prepare people for these sort of things. And when it does happen, they come out of the other side surviving and, actually being better for it because they learned the lessons they learned and we applied and made it better. It's for me, it's always a very satisfactory thing to start this process with people who want to get this done. So it's great. It's a through hike. It's a marathon. It's rowing across the ocean. It's always work. It's always constant improvement.
It's never done.
It's work. Period. It's something.
But the payoff when you need it is so powerful that it's the difference between. I think it's the difference between life and death for a company. It can be. You see those stats. People kick them around all the time, but if you've never been involved in an incident like this, it's very hard to really it's like describing a car accident to a person if you've never been in a car accident.
Yeah, that's I think we're going to say that for another episode because we've only got 2 minutes and I know that you've got someplace to be, so I would like to wrap. Just kind of get out that next in 2 weeks from now we've got Marnie Stockman joining us to talk about our own. This is like the plus of CSF as far as we're concerned on September 8th to talk about education. And that's going to go back into some of what we talked about, fire drills and everything else today. So that's exciting. In fact, I'm going to put it back up there because I want to make sure people see it. That's going to be a fantastic one. We have a couple more episodes that were planned, but I'm going to scrap them because I think we need to do some stuff that's a little bit more exciting. The review of the summer 2022 thing. It's just whatever. We got some more exciting stuff on the way. So with that said, I hate to rush us off, but I know that everyone's got some place to be in the next about 90 seconds. So just want to say, everyone, have a great rest of your week. Make sure that that your compliance is in place and not at risk. I hope that you take a very valiant attitude towards achieving all of your goals this week.
Fantastic.
And with that said, have a good one, folks.
Thanks, everyone. Great.
Bye.
Thank you.